Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Boundaries, the world's premier podcast for international students, or at least in the top 150. I'm John Clark with the TOEFL program, and my distinguished guest today is Salmaan Faraaz, the Director of Recruitment for Northeastern University in South Asia, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa. Salmaan, did I capture it all?
That's correct. Thank you so much, John.
Yes. Thank you for being here. So my first question, and I'm going to start broad, and then we'll work down to the institutional level. You work for Northeastern. Northeastern has 20,000 international students and scholars from nearly 150 countries, so it's a sprawling operation. But let me ask you first, beyond Northeastern, why study in the U.S.?
I think one of the most important reasons would be about the global opportunities out there. Speaking about America as a landscape, as a place for of opportunities, having so many big cities, having industry around. So at the end of the day, I mean, when you look at students coming into the US, they're looking at a quality education factor, but at the same time, they're also looking at actually getting into, getting some practical experience. And Northeastern has actually built on similar principles, which we call it the experiential learning. So we would love students to come in, look at the theoretical aspect in the classes, but at the same time are able to work, able to do, say, co-ops, internships in the US, and also experience, applying the theoretical knowledge into practical experience. So I think that opportunity is widely available in America, and that's one of the key aspects, I would say.
And Northeastern in particular is located in the heart of Boston. If you stand on any street corner in Boston and throw a stone, you're likely to hit a Nobel Prize winner or some genius who has cracked some scientific code. And so the availability of experiential learning opportunities in Boston, I imagine, is vast.
Absolutely. I mean, Northeastern's been in Boston for more than 100 years now. And if you look at the history, 1898 is when the university started. Back in the day, we started off as a school which was specialized in a few programs in engineering, and then eventually also learned the experiential model in 1909. That's when we actually started the model with about 4 companies on board, and we've come a long way from there. And now Boston obviously is a city which is so vibrant, is housed to some of the top universities in the world. So I think the entire community out there is so young, and actually is pretty much a learning community, I would say. But also speaking about other campuses, like Northeastern has grown in the last 2 decades to various other campuses. So in the US, we have not just Boston, but about 11 campuses out there, where students can actually go and study. And apart from the US, we also have expanded to other countries like Canada and the UK. In Canada, we have 2 campuses in Toronto and Vancouver, and also in the UK. So I think Northeastern as a whole, we also offer the global experience, the global network of campuses where students can actually study where they actually wish to.
It's funny, I was going to praise Northeastern for its geographic honesty. A lot of schools have geographic directional names, but it's confusing. Northeastern, if you look at a map of the US, it's truly in the northeastern corner, but it sounds like you have campuses worldwide. And so it's many opportunities abound. And on a personal note, I know that you also studied as an international student in the US. You went to a more geographically confusing school, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which is not in Indiana, but in Pennsylvania. Going back to your own experience, what was your experience like journeying to the U.S. As a student?
Absolutely. I mean, some of the things, I mean, obviously, as a kid, being brought up in India, it was always a dream to actually go out there and study in one of the countries which is so advanced, and also kind of getting that experience of actually studying abroad. And for me, I think the experience in the US was more so also about academic differences, which could be, say, I think the education is quite more practical compared to what I studied in India. And also with the opportunities I got actually after, graduating, or even while graduating and doing these internships, and also the experience of actually, meeting people from various parts of the world. Because I believe, I think we are living in a global world today, and it's important to connect with people from all over. So in my class, I actually met people from Africa, from East Asia, from the Middle East. So I was actually exposed to different cultures. And that also gave me that confidence to kind of work with people from all over the world, and actually on a on a long note, I would say in my career, I was able to deal with people better because I understood what the expectations were like, how the communication would work. I think all of that really connected the dots, and I think my decision to study abroad was actually a really good one. Yeah.
Mm. I like that you mentioned the social components. In my experience at both undergraduate and graduate level, I loved my international student friends, and I often learned more from them than inside the
Yeah.
classroom. But you mentioned something interesting, this idea of the practicality of the education here. Could you dive into that a little bit more for those that are bound for the U.S.? What was different about the classroom experience in your eyes?
Absolutely. So one of the things was about the way the classrooms were set up. Uh, there was no attendance. That's one of the first things I noticed. There was a cohort. Students can actually come into the class, which were designed. You can pick up your teachers, you can pick up your courses, and then you come in. The flexibility of the curriculum and the flexibility of choosing your professors. That's the number one thing which I loved about. You could read about the professors you're going to be working with, their research which is going on, where are they from, what have they done so far. So that was the first aspect which really excited me. The second thing was about how we could actually attend the lectures, and for every 1 hour of lecture, I remember going back to library and at least studying for 4 hours, which meant that there's so many things you gotta figure out yourself and actually dive into it. The curiosity which the professors kind of built in the class, which was amazing. I mean, unlikely back home in India, we used to see it was more of a coursework oriented study, wherein it was more of like subjects, a lot of information given, and then expected to be remembered. Whereas here it was more of doing more research by yourself. That is what I liked. The second thing was also about the office hours, which really made sense to kind of go back and find the faculty and meet them and ask the doubts which you had with them, so which gave you more liberty and time to even go back, do the research for those 4 hours, and then even when you have doubts, come back to the professor and kind of clarify those things. So I really love the part, and also the grading system is amazing, wherein it's just not about a test, which you do at the end, but more so ever about how much work you put in. There were quizzes which happened. There was also the group work. You used to work in groups and do projects, mini projects. And that also kind of really helped us, build friendships, between the peers. So all these aspects kind of really were very different from how it is back home. And then I love the experience of studying there. Yeah.
I want to highlight one thing you mentioned. One mistake I made in college early on was not
Mhm.
taking those faculty office hours seriously.
Mhm.
I thought it
Okay.
would be an imposition. I didn't want to
Okay.
bother them. But as my classes grew smaller and more specialized, I learned junior year that they're there to help. And that's my piece of unsolicited advice to students is early on, take advantage of those faculty office hours. They are there to serve the students. The other thing that echoed with me is your note on no one takes attendance. It's right.
Yeah.
There's a great deal of freedom. And
Yeah.
most of the international students that I interact with are very ambitious, very organized, but that can be kind of unnerving or unmooring to have the freedom. You said flexibility, but you really do
Yeah.
have a lot of freedom with
Yeah.
class selection and attendance. So let me ask you this. Many international students, you mentioned that you have a very diverse student body. This year, more than 800 students from Africa. You have students from around the world. What support systems does Northeastern have in place to help students who are entering this environment with great freedom and flexibility?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great kind of support. I mean, the kind of support we offer has been amazing because of the number of international students we host. As you said, we are about 22,000 plus students coming into Northeastern, the second highest at any American university, and we cover about 150 countries. Which is crazily diverse, I would say. You can meet people from all over the world out there. And in terms of support, we do the English language support, which is also very important. I think many universities expect that if you're coming to America, you would know English, or you would have done your TOEFL scores. But then what happens is we also get students from francophone countries. We get students from East Asia who find communication a little difficult in terms of English. So we offer that English language support, which is extremely key, especially at the beginning of their school. Then we offer academic support. We just touched upon a few cases wherein the education system is very different. It's more practical. So how students do adjust to that, we offer academic supports. We have graduate advisors given to students so that they can connect with them on a regular basis and kind of take tips on how to go about selecting courses, what courses would really help them, don't build the entire pipeline of courses to the degree. And then we also have the cultural support system, which again also is important because America is a country, where some students can actually come in for a cultural shock, how to adjust with it. There could be certain things which has to be done the right way. It could be anything. I mean, just start talking about, say, the way resumes are done, the way the communication is done on emails. All of these things is also something which is supported through this particular department, which is called the Office of Global Services. And finally, I can speak about this in length, but career support. So we have a wonderful, wonderful, team which supports students with career, right from starting from their co-op, which I can elaborate more maybe in the upcoming questions. Northeastern ranks number one for co-op, which means students get this opportunity to, start working before they graduate. So this brilliant team assists students from helping them with interviewing skills, building their resumes, and all the way to getting into a really good co-op. And then eventually, many of these students are able to convert these co-ops into full-time jobs after they graduate. So yeah.
I want to follow up on that note because I know the primary motivation for most international students seeking to study in the U.S. is post-study work. But I have to offer a quick anecdote. You mentioned culture shock. And for international students coming here, I want to note that American students can also have culture shock. I grew up in Oklahoma, which is in the country, not a big city. And I went to school in the Northeast where I had a lot of classmates from New York and Boston. And just to give you an example, back home, we'd say, we're going to go park the car. Whereas in Boston, it's, I'm going to park the car. Almost two entirely different languages. So
Yes.
I love that you have English language support, but even for students with very high degrees of proficiency,
Yes.
you got to get used to that cadence, that
Yep.
Boston rhythm, and it's a different way of speaking. I find it very
Absolutely.
charming.
True, true. Just an example would be, back in Asia, is always called as a lift, which is an elevator in America,
Yes.
So if somebody is looking for a lift, they'll never find it unless they say elevator. You can imagine.
Yes, it's even more confusing nowadays because the Lyft here is also a ride share.
Yeah.
There's a popular ride share in
Yes.
India that's not
Uber, like,
Uber or
yeah,
Lyft.
lift. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes.
It's like Uber, that's right, lift. Yep.
Yeah. Opportunities for misunderstandings abound, but international students should know that, the U.S. is vast, not as vast as India, and not as linguistically diverse as India, but still here we have regional differences. Students should watch maybe a film like Good Will Hunting to try to adopt that accent. So I want to go back to you mentioned the co-op, you mentioned
Yeah.
interviewing skills and networking. You stayed in the U.S. and worked in Arizona for a while, I believe,
Yeah.
and maybe there was something of your experience that you can share. Beyond the coursework, what can students do while they're studying, even within those first years, to maximize their opportunities of obtaining a post-study work opportunity in the U.S.?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. And I think we always have been speaking about this because when international students come in, they are looking out for opportunities once they finish 2 semesters. That's the minimum they got to do in the US before they can actually go out and work. And that's where the co-op hunt starts. But one of the advantages of being in a university where there is so much interchange with the companies, with the industry, is we have projects which are happening on campus. These are called experiential network projects. In short, we call it XN projects. So these are like short-term projects, which could be about 3 weeks to 4 weeks, wherein students can actually indulge in a case study, say of a company which is releasing a new product in the market, and they want to do a case study with a partner institution. So these partners which we have, they run these kind of case studies, these kind of projects on campus all the time. And my suggestion to these students is always to indulge with these industry supported projects, which are very I wouldn't say complex, but I would say some which can create big decisions for them. Like you spoke about Lyft, for example. So there could be a case study which is comparing Uber and Lyft as products, and Uber running this project, asking like, what are those things which we can actually do better in terms of gaining a larger market share. So these kind of projects is something which students can indulge in and kind of build their resume, because obviously many of them have good grades. They have sometimes even experience from their home country. But I would say getting that experience while they are studying is also extremely crucial. So these external projects, these co-op opportunities of getting out there and working before they graduate will really help them build a strong resume, which can actually help them get into a good job immediately after they graduate. I think that's what we have been following, and we see that on rankings like co-op, U.S. News and World Report ranking. We've been consistently number one. Also on career services, we are top 10 for the past 5, 6 years right now, going by Princeton Review. So these are some of the things which we're doing it really right, in which we are encouraging students to indulge in work or at least with extend projects on campus so that they can build their resumes.
And just to emphasize this message, I see two other benefits of these 3 to 4 week shorter experiential learning opportunities. One, it gives students an opportunity to test drive careers. They might
Yeah.
find that they don't like it, or they may find that it really engages them intellectually. And the second, and I say this as someone who will have new interns, international student interns at ETS this summer, um,
Yep.
international students bring a wealth of knowledge and wisdom and unique perspectives to these projects. And so you shouldn't underrate the value you're bringing to these companies through these short-term engagements as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So all parties benefit. Um,
Yep.
Salmaan, this has been great. I really appreciate your thoughts on what it's like to study in the U.S. and your thoughts specific to Northeastern. My last question, a little bit off the beaten path. The American culinary experience is very different to food in South Asia and Southeast Asia. And, and interestingly, as America grows more diverse, you can find food from all over the world. Boston, I imagine, has cuisine from all over the world. But let me ask you this, American food, any tips for those coming here on food to avoid?
And food to avoid in
Yeah,
America?
or
For
food that you liked. Any dining tips on American food?
I mean, I would say, the best part is the American food is very well introduced to the world. No matter, I travel a lot because I oversee South Asia, Southeast Asia, so I travel all over. But what I see is a lot of American food everywhere. So students coming in are very much introduced to most of the stuff which we get in America. But then I know that students will be curious to know if they would get food from their home countries, and the answer is yes. It could be a slightly Americanized version, but then it would be amazing. That I can for sure. But then I would love to have students come and try the steaks in America, which is my personal favorite. I think that is something which I always long to be in America to try out.
Really? Oh, that's funny. Yes, we do. We do steaks well. By
Yeah,
the way, the fact that American food is ubiquitous across the world now, on behalf of all Americans, I'm sorry. The world doesn't need more American food. And just to emphasize your point, I live in
yeah,
suburban Ohio, so I live off a highway stop, and
you're right.
within a mile of my house, I have southern India cuisine, northern
Yeah,
India cuisine, a great Nepalese restaurant that I'm at
there you go.
too often. And so, even in the American heartland, we have certainly
Yes,
absorbed food from around the world, which speaks to the globalization over the last several decades. And it's subtle, but and this is cheesy. I do think that every international student that comes to our shores benefits our country as well as the
yes.
individual. And I'm very grateful for folks like you in our industry who are spreading the word about the benefits of an American degree.
Absolutely. Yep,
All right. Well, Salmaan Faraaz, thank you so much for your time.
absolutely. Thank you so much, John, for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you.